Great. Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody. I am Eric Wilcox. I am statewide director for the Nevada NASA Space Grant and EPSCoR programs, and I am a research professor in the Atmospheric Sciences Division at DRI. Before we dig into it, I'm going to ask our two staff folks on hand to introduce themselves as well. Darlene, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Darlene Aranda. I am the program coordinator and I help Eric, Marcy, and Arlene administer the programs.
Marcy?
I'm Marcy Jackson. I'm the director of the System Sponsor Programs and EPSCoR office. I'm filling in for Arlene Herrera, who is the NASA Research Administrator, who most of your budget type questions will go to as you work on your projects.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of this session today is to talk about the two research infrastructure programs that we fund internally here in the state of Nevada. Two separate programs with different, they're sort of similar, but with different pots of money and different goals. So one is the NASA EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Seed Grant Program, and the other is the NASA Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program. So similar titles, but they differ in some of the details. And so I'm going to hopefully clarify that for you today. I'm going to review, go over the solicitations and highlight some of the details of the solicitation and our proposal submission process for you in today's session, and hopefully I'll leave at least 30 minutes at the end for question and answer. I usually like to start these by, oh, I got to share before you can see what I'm doing. So I like to start by showing you our website, because this is where you'll find our funding opportunities. I usually just type Nevada NASA programs into Google, and this should be the first hit that you get is our website. This is what the front page of our website looks like, and all of our funding opportunities are always posted here under the tab labeled funding opportunities. So if we click there, you'll see our opportunities for students at the top. We do have scholarship and fellowship programs open right now, in addition to our faculty programs. So you'll see those at the top. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see for faculty, we have several programs open. Just in the previous hour, we talked with folks interested in the pre-college and higher ed programs. We're going to skip past those. And the two programs we're talking about today are these two programs here, the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Sea Grant and the Space Grant Research Infrastructure. I'm going to start with the EPSCoR, and so that's the opportunity here. And there's a link here that you can click that will take you to a page specific to this program. Talks about the details of the program, the eligibility, the funding on offer, the period of performance of the awards. I'm going to go through all of that as we walk through the solicitation in a moment. I do want to point you, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's actually a link here to the solicitation. That's a PDF file that has all of the details in it. That's what I'm going to walk through momentarily. And then there's an announcement of this meeting. There's a notice of the deadline, and then the actual proposal submission happens through our website. So there's a link here where you will submit your proposal. You'll click there. There's a web form there. We'll probably ask you some questions, and then you will have prepared by then a single PDF file with your proposal and supporting documents, and there'll be a place there for you to upload your proposal file. And we'll talk about all those details in a moment. I do want to mention briefly that this particular one, the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Sea Grant, we did amend the solicitation slightly in the last week or so. So if you downloaded this more than a few days ago, you might go back to the website and download it again. And the revision was just to make the language around the actual funding on offer a little bit more specific. From year to year, the dollar amount fluctuates, and the balance between how much of the dollar amount we provide through federal funds versus state matching funds, those numbers can vary a little bit from year to year. And so we tried to make the language a bit more specific about how the program is being funded this year and make that clearer in the solicitation. So that's the only amendment that happened. So if you were to click this solicitation link here, you would get to this PDF file. So I'm going to walk through this PDF file. Let me hide this one back here. And then I'll walk through the EPSCoR one here, and then I will briefly talk about the Space Grant one and highlight the differences between the two, but won't go through the Space Grant one in such excruciating detail. So the deadline for this program is February 20, 5 p.m. We do ask that you not wait until 4:55 on February 20 to do your submission. It is rare, but from time to time, we do have people encounter technical issues when they use the web form to submit their proposals. And if that happens, we do accept submissions of proposal documents by email. But the crucial thing is we can only do that if you send it to us by email before that 5 p.m. deadline. If we receive your proposal after the 5 p.m. deadline, we cannot have it reviewed. So please, please start the submission process well in advance of 5 p.m. on February 20, and to allow for any difficulty in that submission process, and to give yourself plenty of time to complete that submission process before the 5 p.m. deadline. Let me scroll down. The other key thing about all of our solicitations is we use this attachment feature in PDF files. So when you download this file from our website, don't merely open it in your browser or open it in some other PDF viewer. Open the PDF file in Adobe Acrobat. And if you do that, you'll see these icons on the right. You can click the paperclip icon, and you'll see that there's a bunch of supporting documents here. And some of these are documents that you will need to do your submission. So there's a cover page here, which is a fillable PDF form that you'll need to fill out. There is a budget template here. That's the Excel file where you will actually prepare your budget for your proposal. We're asking everybody to use the new NASA BioSketch for your CV. We ask you to upload a CV as part of your proposal package. Please use this NASA BioSketch template. That's to align our programs with the way the federal agencies are all going to a fairly common BioSketch format. And then there's some supporting documents here, which I will mention as we go along. So again, open the PDF file in Acrobat so you can be sure to access those attachments. So the EPSCoR program is specifically to develop academic research enterprises that are long-term, self-sustaining, and nationally competitive. The EPSCoR states are a subset of the states that are generally underrepresented in terms of receiving federal grant dollars. So the goal of this program, in essence, is to help build infrastructure in the state for all of you and our research institutions to become more competitive in open competitions for federal research dollars beyond the EPSCoR dollars. So specifically, we want to improve the capabilities of Nevada faculty to gain support from sources outside of the NASA EPSCoR program. Most importantly, we want, if we can, to help you be more competitive and relevant to NASA's missions and their mission directorate priorities. we want to fund projects that contribute to the overall research infrastructure, science and technology capabilities, and higher education in STEM and economic development in Nevada. We want to see stronger partnerships between Nevada researchers, Nevada research institutions, and NASA centers, as well as industry partners that participate in NASA activities. And to the extent that we can align these projects with the Space Grant Program, which is more oriented towards STEM education and STEM workforce development. There's also a desire to see the EPSCoR projects utilize or exploit or be relevant to the unique aspects of Nevada and to relate to the economic development plans in Nevada. So in the attachments that I talked about earlier, you will see references to our science and technology, the NVSGC Science and Technology Plan, as well as the State of Nevada Economic Development Plans. And we ask in your proposals that you try to articulate how your projects are relevant to specific goals and plans unique to the state of Nevada. And then seed grant proposals must result in a submission of a new proposal to a NASA or relevant program. So again, the goal here is not for you to just receive some NASA EPSCoR funds. The goal here is for you to become more competitive in open calls. So we really want to see these projects grow into perhaps a bigger proposal that you would submit directly to NASA or another federal agency, or maybe in some private sector engagement, but critically to help build funding in your lab beyond just the NASA EPSCoR funding. Eligibility. So faculty within any NVSGC institution are eligible to apply. There's no citizenship requirement on these funds. The only real restriction is that faculty who currently have a space grant research infrastructure or NASA EPSCoR research subaward through our program or a NASA EPSCoR grant from one of the NASA EPSCoR federal programs are not eligible to apply for these until the end of their current project. There is a caveat there. If you have a current project, but you expect that project to end, the money to be spent out, and your final report to be submitted before the period of performance begins for the new award that you're proposing to, we will, under those circumstances, accept your proposal and get it reviewed. But if your project is selected, but you still haven't spent out your previous award or submitted your final report to us, and that project is still open, then we won't make the new award. So, and that's a problem for us because we might have selected yours over somebody else's proposal. So, consider that carefully, I guess I would say. And then we also asked that the two programs that we're talking about here today, this EPSCoR program and the Research Infrastructure Award, you have to choose between one or the other. So you can't propose to both the Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program and the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Seed Grant Project. You have to pick one or the other. Ideally, the one that's better suited to the goals and the plans for your specific project. Under EPSCoR, we anticipate funding two projects at $31,000. That will be, the $31,000 will be all federal funds. There are no state project matching funds accompanying these awards or being used for these awards, and there's no institutional match required for these awards. Again, there is a budget template in the attached documents. Please formulate your budget there. work with your sponsor project office in the development of your budget. There's a place on the budget form there for them to sign it. They have to sign it for us to review your proposal. And then I always say, if there's any questions about preparing your budget, please reach out to us sooner rather than later. We can help answer specific questions about budget and budget restrictions. I may have more to say about budget restrictions as we get towards the bottom of this document. You may will make a subaward to the lead, the institution of the lead PI, and then you can collaborate with folks at other institutions, and subaward funds would go from your institution to theirs. Potential delays in congressional appropriations is always a thing, although I don't think that's an issue at this point for this program, unless I'm mistaken, Marcy.
We just got a notice that the Senate has passed the budget for
Yeah,
us.
good. So we're anticipating our funds from NASA programs due to very recent congressional action. We do have some reporting requirements. I won't go through those all in detail. Sometimes we are asked by NASA to provide information to them on their schedule, not necessarily on our schedule. So sometimes for some of our projects, this is maybe more relevant to Space Grant than EPSCoR, but sometimes we do send you our report template while your project is still in progress and ask you to fill it out as best you can up to this point. And we only do that because we're asked by NASA on their schedule to submit data. So there's always that possibility that we may ask you for sort of an interim report and then a final report when your project is done. Let's go into the details of the proposal. Your proposal will consist of a cover page. Again, there is a fillable PDF in the attachments over here where the paperclip is. Please use that fillable PDF for the cover sheet. It has specific information that we need you to fill out. Then your project description will be a 5-page document limited to 5 pages. It will consist of a title, an abstract or summary of the project of not more than 300 words. Then a detailed description of the project goals, the objectives, and the methods that you will use. It's definitely okay to break your project into specific tasks and describe each of those tasks. And then your anticipated products. So what do you expect the project to produce in terms of publications? Again, one of the expectations of this program in particular is that you submit, that this helps you submit a bigger proposal to a federal agency. So please tell us where you intend to seek non-EPSCoR funding for your project down the road. And then other tangible products that your project might result in, some hardware, some instrumentation, some software, websites, other intellectual property, patents, for example. Any of that would be great. And if you anticipate those, please do describe those in your project. That'll help with the evaluation. List any collaborators. We do encourage collaboration with NASA scientists or NASA engineers or other subject matter experts at NASA. So please do, if you can, reach out to NASA contacts. We can't provide funding for them, but in whatever way they are able to help, even if it's just being a point of contact to help answer questions or help you better understand the relevance of your project to a specific NASA mission, please articulate that as best you can in the proposal. And please, if you can, secure a letter from that individual articulating that they are collaborating or in whatever way they are helping you. Please have them articulate that in that letter. We do understand that recently there are increasing obstacles to in some corners of NASA getting those kinds of letters. Please, if you're encountering difficulty, please reach out to me. Let me know if you don't know of a contact or you want to establish better contact with a NASA center, but you don't know where to get started or don't have any contacts. Please reach out to me. I can help as best I can, either through my own network at NASA or through other researchers that I know in the community who might have contacts at NASA. We can try to help you as best we can. We ask that you, thanks Dwayne for your question in chat. I will get back to that momentarily. Included in the paperclip here is the NSHE Science and Technology Plan, as well as a State of Nevada Economic Development Plan. Again, our mission is to make these funds relevant to the goals of the state in terms of research and technology and economic development. So please articulate how your project is relevant to those plans. Also included in the attachments here is a copy of the most recent NASA strategic plan, which was dated 2022. Presumably there will be another strategic plan soon under the new NASA leadership. There's also a more detailed document. Let's see if I can point it out here in this NASA priority document. Is a lengthier document that we get from the EPSCoR office, which includes some details about the specific NASA mission directorates, what their priorities are, what the NASA center's priorities are. There's somewhat, not a direct, but a somewhat of a mapping between which mission directorates the NASA centers are more closely aligned with. Please look through that document. And to the extent that it can help you articulate how your project is relevant to NASA. And again, if you're having any difficulty figuring out how to connect your project to NASA, please reach out to me. I could try to help with that. And as I mentioned, you'll fill out a web form when you submit your proposal. And one of the things that we ask is which mission directorate your project is aligned with. And that helps us report to NASA how the projects we fund are specifically related to NASA's mission directorates. So we do ask that you give some thought to how your project aligns specifically to the mission directorate at NASA. If you're having, again, any difficulty with that, please reach out to me sooner rather than later. We can talk about it. I can try to help you as best I can. The budget, as I mentioned, there's a budget template. Please use that. There's a budget justification required, and I believe in this one there is a budget justification example included in the attachments. There, again, any questions about the budget, reach out to us, and I can have Arlene and Marcy help me answer those questions. We asked for a NASA funding history for the lead PI on the proposal. If you have a prior funding history with NASA or NASA EPSCoR space grant, please list those projects limited to 1 page. If you have a really, really lengthy list, then maybe the last 5 years, limit that to 1 page. There's no page limit on references and citations. The biographical sketch, again, we ask that you use, I know this is a pain, but we ask that you use NASA's template. My understanding is that the intent ultimately is for all the federal agencies to get to a more sort of unified template for CVs for proposals. So that's why we're including that in our programs as well. And that helps all of us be more relevant to making national submissions. And then again, letters of collaboration. So letters of collaboration or support, particularly from NASA center individuals, are really helpful for helping to establish the relevance of your project to NASA, will help in the evaluation. And I will say that that doesn't just mean NASA civil servants who are at NASA centers. I know from my own personal experience that the majority of people at many of the NASA centers aren't actually NASA civil servant employees. They're contractors or university affiliates. Those are perfectly fine. There are some NASA-related, some research facilities that aren't necessarily at a NASA center, but are funded by NASA or NASA-affiliated. Contacts there are fine. Even if you're, I would say for review purposes, a letter from somebody who works at a NASA center, be they civil servant or contractor, probably looks stronger. But even if your letter is from somebody who's from the sort of broader NASA community, like an academic who's on a science team, one of the NASA science teams, for example, that would be great too. And be sure that it's clear in your proposal that the person you're collaborating with, even if they're not working at a NASA center, is part of a NASA mission team or a NASA science team, or they're a PI of a NASA mission or something like that. Make those connections as concrete and clear in your proposal as possible to help your proposal get better reviewed. Let's see, I already talked about the deadline. All of those elements of your proposal that we just outlined will be compiled into a single PDF file. There's a naming convention here. We'd like you to name that PDF file following this convention here. And again, some of the required elements like the cover sheet and the budget template are in the attached documents here. And then here's the list of the review criteria. I think I've touched on most of these, so I won't read these in detail. The one detail here, item E, that I'll mention is that I get these reviewed by a panel. It's usually a panel of researchers within NSHE. They are generally folks that I know who are familiar with our programs, are familiar with NASA, but I can't guarantee that there will be an expert on the panel who is expert in the same disciplinary area that you work in or that your proposal is targeting. So please make sure that your proposal is understandable to a practicing scientist who is broadly experienced in STEM topics. Don't use a lot of disciplinary jargon that somebody outside of your field wouldn't be able to understand. Again, that alignment to NASA priorities is important. And then the relationship to the Nevada's science and technology and economic development plans is important. Again, the deadline. I guess the last piece here is our contact information at the bottom. Again, any questions at all, please do not hesitate to contact any of us. Chances are, if one of us receives a question, we're going to copy in the others in our response so that we're all on the same page in terms of what the questions are and who we've provided answers to. So reach out to any or all of us with your questions and do that sooner rather than later. So that's the EPSCoR program. Let me just briefly talk about the Space Grant Program, and I see the questions popping into the chat. So we'll get to the questions momentarily. Research infrastructure is similar in that we are providing relatively small seed grants for research projects to NSHE faculty, but the focus is a little bit different. So here's the details again. Deadline for this program, February 20, 5 p.m. Same deal. You'll submit through our website through the specific link for the Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program. Please don't wait until the last minute to do that. The key thing here that I want to emphasize is that the mission of the Space Grant Program is different than the mission for the EPSCoR program. So the mission of the EPSCoR program, again, is to develop that research infrastructure, make us more competitive in open calls, to link our research activities to the science, technology, and economic development goals of the state. The goal of Space Grant is to develop a diverse and capable STEM workforce by providing funds for NASA-related faculty research and workforce development projects. These projects will enhance Nevada's research infrastructure and provide STEM workforce development opportunities for students in NASA Mission Directorate research topic areas. So I would say if your project doesn't engage with students in some way, then it's probably better suited to the EPSCoR program than to the Space Grant program. One of the review criteria for our Space Grant projects is the plan for engaging students, and that's because Space Grant has this particular focus on STEM education and workforce development in the state. Here's the eligibility. We're open to all faculty. You do not have to be a U.S. Citizen to be a PI and receive funding as faculty member for these projects. But I believe there's a citizenship requirement for students. And I'm realizing now that we didn't articulate that here, Marcy, but maybe we should.
Yes, any students that are paid through a fellowship or GRA type of position will need to be U.S. Citizens according to the Space Grant regulations.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. So if you intend to use these funds, again, to pay a student, such as through a research assistantship, then that student would have to be a U.S. citizen. In terms of the funding, the research, the awards here are a little bit bigger than in the EPSCoR program. These will be in the form of $25,000 federal and then $25,000 in state matching funds. The total dollar amounts that we get for Space Grant is significantly bigger than EPSCoR. That's why the awards are somewhat bigger, and we also intend to fund up to 6 research infrastructure awards. And the reason why those numbers are different between EPSCoR and Space Grant, again, is just because the volume of funds that we receive is bigger in the Space Grant program than it is in the EPSCoR program. The period of performance is expected to be similar here, June through May. The awarding, I think I mentioned earlier, this is perhaps more relevant to Space Grant than EPSCoR. We do ask for contact information for students that are engaged in the project, and we may reach out to you in the fall while your project is still active and send you our reporting template and ask you at the very least to provide us the contact information for the students that are engaged in your project. That's because we provide that information to NASA. And NASA does, Space Grant does some reporting where they send surveys to students that are engaged in Space Grant activities, and they do some longitudinal tracking to try to demonstrate how what happens to Space Grant students after they've received funding through Space Grant. So we need that contact information. So we may ask you for interim reporting in order to provide information to NASA on their schedule, and then we will follow up with you at the end of your project for a final report on your project. Proposal guidelines, I won't go through this in detail because I think it's pretty similar. Really, the only difference, again, is this plan for student involvement. So that is one of the review criteria for the Space Grant programs is, again, because of that STEM education workforce development goal of the Space Grant program. Student involvement is a reviewed element of these projects. So be as detailed as you can in your proposal about, if not which students specifically will be engaged in your project, but if not that, then at least what type of student, how many students, how you're going to recruit those students, what those students will be doing, which tasks will be performed by the student versus which tasks may be performed by other personnel on the project. Be as detailed as you can about that. If you're planning on recruiting a new student for this project, talk about how you plan to recruit that student. All of that will be evaluated in the evaluation of your proposal. And then I talk about NASA alignment already. Same rules apply for NASA alignment. Funding we already talked about. I guess I didn't mention previously with regard to budgets, there are some specific restrictions on what NASA funds can be spent on. Those are detailed here. International travel is one that is not necessarily banned, but we have to get approval from our program officer before we can approve you to include international travel in your budget. So reach out to us if that's an issue. There's restrictions on purchasing equipment from specific manufacturers that's listed here. And these are all restrictions that are specified in federal law. And that's why you see those here. And I think that's it in terms of differences between this program and the other program. Before I go to questions, Darlene, Marcy, is there anything else that I missed or that you'd like to add?
I'll put in my usual plug, as Eric had stated, to please work with your sponsor programs office well in advance of the due date so they can provide you the support to ensure that your proposal is fully compliant before it's submitted.
Thank you for that. Let me click over to the chat here because it looked like there were several questions coming in, and I'll just go through these here, and then we'll probably have some time to open it up for more questions. So Dwayne asks, does being a PI or co-I on an active NASA EPSCoR NOFO project underway make one ineligible to serve as a PI on the RID or sea grant proposal? Yes, I believe that is the case. Yeah, so faculty who are currently have a space grant research infrastructure or NASA EPSCoR research subaward or grant, and I think we intend that to include the federal grants as well, are not eligible until after the end of their project. Do you want to follow up on that, Dwayne? You're welcome to.
Sure. So I'm talking specifically about the NOFO, the big nationally competed one. Is that's what it, so
Yeah. So I think that's when we say NASA EPSCoR research grant, I think that's meant to be inclusive of those federal grants. That's just a way of helping us spread the EPSCoR money around the state as much as we can, I think is basically the reason for that.
I'm glad I asked. Yes, thank you.
Does the PI or co-I have to be NASA faculty? Can you clarify, Dr. Chen? I'm not sure what NASA faculty means. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just say the research team is that has to be some from NASA. Or just if I'm the PI, I can have a collaborator just at our institute. Is that okay? Or I have to have some collaborator?
Yeah, so the goal for all of these projects, particularly these research infrastructure projects, we want to help facilitate connections between NASA researchers and Nevada researchers. So the intent here is for the PI to be a Nevada faculty member at one of the NSHE institutions. In fact, that's one of the requirements. You have to be an NSHE faculty member to apply. But we would like, if possible, for you to be collaborating with somebody at NASA. And so we encourage you to reach out to people that you may know within the NASA community at a NASA center. And if you can, secure a letter that says that they are interested in collaborating with you. That said, we can't, The funds, we can't necessarily use these funds to pay a NASA person necessarily. The funds could be used to maybe offset the cost of using a laboratory facility or something like that. We'd have to talk about the details of that. So we can't necessarily fund a NASA person, but if there is somebody who you know at a NASA center who's doing research that is aligned with your project, even if they're just somebody who is there as a contact, somebody that you might bounce questions off of, or helping you establish the relevance of your project to a NASA mission, that makes your proposal stronger. Let's see.
Then do I need to budget there in the budget summary?
Not necessarily. So you don't need to, you don't have to budget them. Again, I think it would be difficult for us to fund somebody outside of the state anyway. So, and I appreciate that that might limit the extent to which, if somebody's not funded, it would limit the extent to which they might be available to collaborate with you. But you know, if somebody is engaged at a NASA center working on a NASA mission, presumably they have some funding through the NASA mission for their participation in that mission. You'd have to be hoping that they're leveraging that for any time that they're able to provide for you. So I don't think you need to put it in the budget, but you want to articulate, if you have that connection, if you have that, that collaborator at NASA, you'll want to include their name in your proposal, the relationship, the what they intend to contribute to the project. And then again, if possible, secure a letter from them saying that they do intend to offer that the level of collaboration that's articulated in the proposal.
Thank you.
Yep. And then I'll just skip down to this question. Is a collaborator from NASA required or encouraged when submitting a seed grant proposal? It used to be a requirement. I'm not, do we say required? I'm not sure if it says it's required or not, to be honest with you. Let me say that we talked about that recently, and Marcy, do you want to clarify? I didn't look back specifically at the language.
It does say that they need a letter of support, okay, at least. Within that has to have been signed within 45 days of the submission date.
So it is a requirement based on the wording of our solicitation. We may in the future, because of some of the changes and some of the guidance that NASA's, at least their civil servant scientists, are receiving. We have heard recently that some civil servants in some corners of NASA are being discouraged from providing letters of support. But I will say, judging from the number of people that attended this, that the proposals that have a letter of support will be viewed more competitive. And my guess is that the ones that get selected probably will have letters of support from a NASA collaborator. So again, if you're having any difficulty with that, please reach out to me sooner rather than later, and we can talk about it, and I can help out in any way that I can. Let me skip back up Patrick's question. Since I've already received an EPSCoR R3 support, am I eligible to apply for this opportunity? And so the answer to that, Patrick, is the same as the answer to Dwayne's. If your project is still ongoing at the time you expect your research infrastructure seed grant project to begin, then you would be ineligible. But if you expect that project to be done, the money spent, and your final report submitted to NASA for that R3 project before the beginning of the period of performance of this project, then I would say go ahead and submit a proposal. And if you're selected, we can fund your project again if your prior project is completed by the beginning of the period of performance.
Okay,
Your
got it.
R3, your R3 does not end till August 31st, however, so I wouldn't say that you'd be eligible this year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so B. Lee is asking, can you explain more about the decision-making process for the research grant? Yeah, sure. So let me just scroll down on the space grant one since I didn't linger on this. Should have evaluation and work criteria. So again, I assemble a panel of researchers. Usually they're researchers within the state of Nevada who are not conflicted to review the proposals. The number of reviewers usually depends on the number of proposals. I try to get at least 2 reviewers to read each proposal, if not 3. And they are sort of comparatively reviewed in the sense that if the volume of proposals is small enough, then every reviewer will read every proposal. If the volume of proposals is large, I can't necessarily guarantee that. And then I have to come up with a sort of overlapping structure so that each proposal is read by at least 2 reviewers and that each reviewer is sort of getting a cross-section of the proposals. That's how I do it. The criteria for the space grant are in the center of the screen here. They will evaluate the research goals and objectives, and then the methods you're proposing to use to the best of their ability, and how adequately those methods are articulated to meet the goals and objectives of the project. And again, let me remind you that I can't guarantee that the reviewers will be experts or have a great deal of disciplinary expertise in your topic area. So it's sort of incumbent upon you to articulate how the methods you are using are going to ensure that you meet the goals and objectives of your project, and to do that in language that's understandable by a sort of broad cross-section of STEM researchers. Your demonstrated ability of the faculty to conduct the anticipated research. That means you'll want to include a little bit in your research plan about each of the participants and their background and expertise, and how they are contributing to the project. The anticipated products and outcomes, as I discussed before. The alignment to the NASA Mission Directorate. So there'll be a specific criteria, review criteria on how your project aligns with NASA's goals. So you want to be as specific as you can be about that, more specific than just, well, I work on spacecraft and NASA cares about spacecraft. Be as specific as you can. No, don't just tell us which mission directorate your project is aligned with. Tell us how your project aligns with the mission directorate. If there is a specific mission, if there is a satellite mission, the Artemis mission, as an example, any of the space science missions, any of the satellite missions, any of the computing modeling activities that NASA's doing, whatever the specific mission is, tell us how your project aligns specifically to that activity that NASA is doing. And again, in terms of your ability to propose in the future, NASA's federal solicitations all align with its missions. So if your project is going to help you be more competitive or help you get some preliminary data to write a more competitive federal proposal, you're going to have to tell us which program, which mission your project is helping you lead toward. So be as specific as you can about that. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that. Let me see. Do we need the OSP? Oh, do we need the OSP to submit? Marcy?
Yes. You need to work with your sponsor programs office or business manager to ensure your proposal meets the guidelines and that your budget is appropriate and that they have signed off on the cover page. And then it's between you and your OSP office to determine whether they want to load and hit submit or if they'll allow you to load and hit submit. There's not a restriction saying only OSP can hit submit, but they need to be involved in the process and you need to follow your internal policies on that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The next question, for a space grant, is there less of a focus on collaboration with NASA and or on obtaining additional funding? Does that mean any STEM project could be a fit? I would say, here's what I say. All of our programs, we aim to strengthen connections to NASA. And really the goal of a research infrastructure project is to build your capacity to conduct research. So it's certainly our goal to see you become more relevant to NASA's programs at the federal level. With Space Grant, we don't have a requirement that you submit a proposal. But we do, I believe, have a requirement that you provide a letter of support. So that connection to NASA is still important. I hope that clarifies. As far as the follow-up question, does that mean that any STEM project could be a fit? Again, I would say the answer is no, not any STEM project. Again, it's sort of incumbent upon you to articulate how your project is relevant to NASA. And so a STEM project that can articulate clearly that it's fits neatly into this specific NASA mission and meets a goal and a goal that NASA has articulated for that mission, that would be a very strong connection to NASA. That's I guess what I would say to that. And I think, if you have questions about that, if you're not sure how your project aligns with NASA, feel free to reach out to me separately. Shoot me an email. We could even set up a time for a one-on-one meeting, and we can talk about it. I don't necessarily know what every corner of NASA is doing, but I'm fairly broadly knowledgeable, and I have a network of people at NASA or people who are connected with NASA, so I can maybe help you think about how your project relates to NASA if it's not clear to you. If we cannot get a letter of collaboration support from NASA, should we not submit? Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a requirement. That's the way we released the solicitation. So I would say, yeah, if it's a requirement in our solicitation, then it needs to be there for the project to be, for the proposal to be complete and for us to get it reviewed. But if you're anticipating that to be a challenge at this point, then please reach out to me. We can find a way. I wouldn't want somebody to just give up at this stage on that. What I said about some civil servants in some corners being discouraged, that's not universal. And the contractors that work at NASA centers are not subject to the same restrictions that civil servants are. So you might find a contractor to be more amenable. If your connections happen to be with people at JPL, everybody at JPL, for example, is a contractor. They're all Caltech employees. They're not NASA employees. So they are somewhat less restricted in terms of how they can engage with the community more broadly because they're not NASA employees. And then even as I said, I mean, at this point, I would say if you can find somebody who is like a science team member of a NASA mission, get a letter from them. My intent is to view that sort of broadly in terms of we want to see you connected with the NASA community. It doesn't have to be a NASA civil servant necessarily. And then the last question here, does including someone as an advisor who currently holds a NASA EPSCoR grant make the proposal ineligible? I would say no. If you want to include them as a co-investigator or a co-PI and have them funded through the project, that would be a different story. Again, our goal is to kind of spread the money around as much as possible. So we don't necessarily want to be funding directly PIs or co-PIs who have other NASA EPSCoR space grant money. But if you want to name somebody as an unfunded collaborator who's or somebody who is separately funded and they're going to leverage that separate funding to contribute to your project, that would be allowed too. You just have to be clear in your budget justification and articulate that. There's ways around that as well. Having them as not directly funded by the project, but involved in your project does not make your proposal ineligible. And if there's, again, any questions about how to structure your budget about that, reach out to us. We'll help you work on that. It's 3 minutes before the top of the hour. Any other questions? Okay, it doesn't look like it. And this is not your last chance. So as I said, reach out to us at any time. Both solicitations, our contact information's at the bottom. I'm happy to answer questions. We're all happy to take questions. If it's a budget question, I might fold Arlene or Marcy in to help me sort it out, but we're happy to answer questions. Earlier, the better. The sooner, the better. And I'll just reiterate one more time, don't wait until late in the afternoon on deadline day to do your submission. Start your submission a little bit beforehand to allow for any technical glitches. I do see one question David asks, do you have a list of previously funded projects? I believe on our website you can find some of that information. Yeah, so go to our website. At least our currently funded projects are there, and maybe our past funded projects as well. Okay, if that's it, we will wrap it up. Thanks everybody for attending. Thanks for your interest in our programs. We appreciate all the interest, and we look forward to seeing your proposals.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.